He wasn't looking for special treatment, just wanted to buy motor oil for his old pickup truck. The same truck he'd been driving for 15 years, the one with rust spots and a dented tailgate that told stories nobody bothered to ask about. But mechanics at Patterson's auto shop saw something else entirely. Another slow-moving senior citizen wasting their time on a busy Friday afternoon. "Can I help you, old-timer?" The lead mechanic, Tyler, barely looked up from his phone as the elderly man approached the service counter. Behind him, two younger employees shared a knowing smirk. The old man moved carefully, his right leg noticeably stiff, wearing a faded denim jacket over a plain white T-shirt. On his weathered baseball cap, the only decoration was a small pin that most people wouldn't recognize, the distinctive wings and anchor of Marine Reconnaissance. "Yes, sir, I need conventional motor oil for a 2008 Ford F-150, he said quietly, his voice carrying the measured cadence of someone accustomed to being precise with words. 5W, 30 if you have it. Tyler rolled his eyes dramatically. "Conventional oil? Dude, nobody uses that dinosaur stuff anymore. What you need is full synthetic. Costs more, but your ancient truck might actually run better." "I appreciate the suggestion," the old man replied patiently. "But conventional oil has worked fine for me. Just need 2 quarts. That's when Jake, the youngest mechanic, decided to join the conversation. "Look, Pops, maybe you should just take your truck to Jiffy Lube. This is a real auto shop for people who actually know about cars." The third employee, Marcus, laughed from across the garage. "Yeah, probably learned to drive back when cars had cranks." The elderly man stood still for a moment, his weathered hands resting on the counter. There was something in his posture, not defeated, but resigned, like he'd experienced this kind of treatment before and had long ago decided it wasn't worth fighting. "I understand," he said simply. "Sorry to bother you, gentlemen." He turned and walked toward the exit, his gait uneven but dignified. The mechanics went back to their phones and their jokes, completely unaware that their afternoon was about to change dramatically. None of them noticed a woman in the customer waiting area. She was perhaps 45, wearing a Marine Corps T-shirt under her jacket, and she had watched the entire exchange with growing anger. As soon as the old man left, she stepped outside and made a phone call. "Captain Rodriguez? It's Sergeant Major Williams." "Yeah, I'm fine, but I just witnessed something you need to know about. Remember Gunnery Sergeant Robert Chen?" "Yeah, that Robert Chen. He just got disrespected at Patterson's auto shop on 5th Street. At 2:15 p.m., exactly 1 hour after Robert Chen had left the auto shop, the first Marine arrived, then the second, then the third. By 2:20, 12 Marines in dress blue uniforms were standing in formation in the shop's parking lot. They didn't announce themselves. They didn't make threats. They simply walked to the front door of Patterson's auto shop in perfect synchronization, their dress shoes clicking against concrete floor in a rhythm that made everyone in the building stop what they were doing. Tyler looked up from his phone to see 12 Marines arranged in a semicircle around the service counter. The youngest was perhaps 25, the oldest approaching 60, but they all carried themselves with the same unmistakable bearing. Can we help you?" Tyler stammered. Captain Maria Rodriguez stepped forward. Her uniform was immaculate, her bearing commanding, and when she spoke, her voice carried the authority of someone accustomed to being obeyed. "An hour ago, a Marine walked through that door. Gunnery Sergeant Robert Chen, Force Reconnaissance. 3 tours in Afghanistan, 2 in Iraq. He served this country for 27 years. He was looking for motor oil. Your staff decided he was too old, too slow, and not worth your time." The shop fell completely silent. Even the radio that had been playing classic rock seemed to fade into nothing. "You told him to take his business to Jiffy Lube," Captain Rodriguez continued. "You called him Pops and suggested he learn to drive when cars had cranks. You treated a decorated war hero like he was an inconvenience." Tyler's face had gone pale. "Ma'am, we didn't know." "No, you didn't know, because you didn't ask. You saw an older man with a limp and decided he wasn't worth basic respect." Sergeant Major Williams stepped forward and placed a folded flag on the counter. Not a ceremonial flag, but one that was worn and faded, clearly carried through combat. Gunny Chen pulled me out of a burning Humvee in Helmand Province in 2012, she said. Took shrapnel in his leg doing it. That's why he limps. He saved my life and the lives of 3 other Marines, and he's never once mentioned it to anyone outside the Corps. Another Marine placed a photograph on the counter. It showed a group of Marines in full combat gear, covered in dust, standing in front of an armored vehicle. The man in the center, younger than but unmistakably the same person who had been in the shop an hour ago, had his arms around 2 Marines who looked like they'd been through hell. That was taken after Gunny Chen led a rescue mission to save Marines trapped behind enemy lines, Captain Rodriguez explained. 48 hours without sleep, under constant fire. He brought everyone home. Jake, the youngest mechanic, stared at the photo. I didn't know. You were just disrespecting a Marine who's done more for this country than most people could do in 10 lifetimes, Captain Rodriguez replied. And now you do know. Without another word, the Marines executed a perfect about-face and marched out of the shop in the same formation they'd entered. No threats, no demands, no speeches about patriotism. Just the quiet power of truth delivered with military precision. Outside, word had already begun to spread. Someone had filmed the Marines entering the shop, and within minutes the video was circulating on social media. The caption was simple. When you disrespect a Marine, the Corps remembers. By 4 p.m., the story had reached the local news. By 6 p.m., it was trending nationally. People began sharing their own stories about Robert Chen, the quiet man who volunteered at the VA hospital, who helped struggling veterans navigate bureaucracy, who paid for groceries for military families without anyone knowing. The owner of Patterson's auto shop, David Patterson, arrived as the sun was setting. He found the photo and flag still on the counter where the Marines had left them. His employees were sitting in stunned silence. "Tell me what happened," he said quietly. After hearing the story, Patterson walked his office and returned with a framed certificate and a small placard. He placed them next to the photo of the Marines. The certificate read, Patterson's Auto Shop, proud to serve those who served. All military personnel receive priority service and veteran discounts. The placard was simpler. Gunnery Sergeant Robert Chen, welcome here always. Your service will never be forgotten. Robert Chen returned to the shop the following Tuesday, not because he needed to, but because Captain Rodriguez had called and asked him to come. He walked through the front door to find David Patterson waiting behind the counter personally. Gunnery Sergeant Chen, Patterson said, extending his hand. I'm David Patterson, and I owe you an apology. Not just for my employees' behavior, but for not creating an environment where heroes are recognized and respected. Robert looked around the shop. The photo was prominently displayed, along with an American flag and several military service plaques. Tyler, Jake, and Marcus stood nearby, their previous arrogance replaced by obvious shame. Sir, Tyler stepped forward. I want to apologize. I was disrespectful and ignorant, and I have no excuse for how I treated you. Robert studied the young man for a moment. Apology accepted. But I want you to understand something. I didn't serve for recognition or special treatment. I served because it was my duty. The respect I earned isn't for me personally. It's for the uniform and what it represents. I understand, sir, Tyler replied, and I want to learn more about that. David Patterson smiled. That's exactly what I was hoping to hear. Gentlemen, I'm implementing a new policy. Every employee will complete a course on military history and veteran affairs. We're going to make sure this never happens again. Robert Chen nodded approvingly. That's a good start. And Tyler, yes, sir. Conventional oil works just fine for older vehicles. Sometimes the old ways are the best ways. The young mechanic smiled for the first time since the incident. Yes, sir. I'll remember that. 6 months later, Patterson's Auto Shop had become known throughout the region as the most veteran-friendly automotive service center in the state. They employed 3 veterans, offered free oil changes to active military personnel, and had partnered with local veterans organizations to provide discounted services to families in need. Robert Chen became a regular customer, not just for his truck, but as an unofficial advisor to the shop's veteran outreach programs. He never spoke about his combat experiences, But his presence reminded everyone who worked there that heroes walk among us, often unrecognized and unassuming. The photo of his Marine unit remained on the wall, not as a shrine, but as a reminder. Below it, David Patterson had added one final inscription. Service means putting others first, even when no one notices. Honor means doing what's right, even when no one's watching. Respect means recognizing both in others, especially when they wear no uniform. Tyler, who had been the most disrespectful that first day, became the shop's most enthusiastic supporter of veteran services. He completed his military history course with distinction and began volunteering at the local VA hospital. When people asked why he'd become so involved with veteran affairs, he would tell them about the day he learned the difference between seeing an old man with a limp and recognizing a hero who'd served his country with distinction. "I thought I was looking at someone who was slowing me down," Tyler would explain. "I was actually looking at someone who had dedicated his life to making sure I could live freely in this country. It was the most important lesson I've ever learned." Robert Chen continued his quiet service to the community, helping veterans, supporting military families, and living by the Marine Corps values that had shaped him for nearly 3 decades. He never sought recognition for his military service, but he no longer had to worry about being dismissed or disrespected by those who couldn't see past his age or his limp. The Marines who had stood up for him that day had sent a message that resonated far beyond one auto shop in one small town. They had reminded everyone that true warriors don't seek glory, but they deserve recognition. They don't demand special treatment, but they've earned respect. And when society forgets their sacrifice, their brothers and sisters will always remember. Some battles are fought with weapons. Others are fought with quiet dignity, patient service, and a willingness to stand up for what's right. Gunnery Sergeant Robert Chen had fought both kinds of battles, and he had won them all, not through force, but through character. The young mechanics learned that day that heroism doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it walks quietly into an auto shop, asking for nothing more than 2 quarts of conventional motor oil and basic human respect. And sometimes, when that respect is denied, the entire Marine Corps shows up to remind the world that Semper Fi isn't just a motto, it's a promise that no Marine stand alone. In the end, the lesson was simple but profound. Treat every person with dignity, because you never know when you're standing in the presence of greatness. And if you fail to show that respect, there might just be 12 Marines ready to remind you what honor really means.